Okay, your turn.
My turn for what now?
For your prediction. Last week, I made a prediction that I thought episode 11 of the David and Hillary show would be great. Now you have to make a prediction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I predict that episode 12 will follow episode 11.
That's not a prediction.
Yeah, it is. And it's also less subjective than your prediction.
Okay, well, don't forget, mine came true.
Yeah, it did. I'm pretty sure mine's going to come true as well.
Well, suffice it to say that neither one of us is a prophet.
That is a fact. It is also a fact that episode 12 is currently following episode 11.
All right, let's do this. All right, so this week I had somebody ask us for show and tell on the house.
Oh, an update. Yeah, we haven't done that for a minute.
All right, so so here's the picture, and we have a roof. We have a roof, and we have they put the shingles on. I don't know what they're doing inside now because they've built these walls that I can't see through.
I know, how rude.
But
they
they're
also
really coming along.
Well, they also did windows, and so most of the work is happening inside, and in some ways it's kind of nice because we don't hear it. So
They're really moving along.
Yeah, they're going quick like they said they would. Well, speaking of quick, I wanted to do a quick spring update. So the first picture we're going to show you is from our garden, and one of the first show and tells we did was of our garden, and there was like this much green stuff coming up through all of last year's brown leaves, and now it looks like that. So it's exciting. We'll have blooms to come. But on the other end of the garden, we've got the tail end of the dogwood tree with the pink and red old-fashioned azaleas. It's just one of my favorite pictures. One of my favorite spots in the garden this time of year anyway. The cranberry colored clematis, which I showed you last week. I just showed you one. It's really filling out on that side of the trellis, which is fun. And here we have our traditional bleeding heart in a little grouping with some Japanese painted fern. And you can, if you look really close, you can see red azalea buds in the azalea that's behind all of that. That's pretty fun. The Mandarin Lights azaleas, this is what they look like now. They're just getting ready to explode, and I can't wait to show you what that looks like. I can't wait to see it myself. It's another one of my favorite parts of our garden in the spring. And irises, look at that. We love irises. We found a really cool place, Iris City Gardens, which is, 30, 40 minutes from here, kind of out in the country in Middle Tennessee. And we've bought a few things from them over the last couple of years. And this is one of them, beautiful iris. We were working last week, and while we were working on a pond, it just opened up and rained. Like, it was so miserable because we were doing stuff we couldn't stop. We had to finish it, and we were getting poured on. But on the way out of the driveway, I stopped and took this picture of columbine with raindrops on it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that was a nice little side thing. And here is a purple Louisiana iris in front of a waterfall that we built. This is actually growing in the edge of a pond and waterfall that we built for a friend of ours. So that is the spring portion of our show and tell.
Yes, definitely getting very beautiful out there.
It is. It is. It's fun. And now I want to take just a minute and do a completely different type of show and tell. This is a picture of my favorite Bible that I own. So yeah, I know it looks terrible. What in the world happened to your Bible, David?
You read it. That's what happened.
I read it a lot and used it for studying a lot, and I carried it a lot. And it just, it was leather, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And over time, the cover fell off. And the reason it's my favorite Bible is two things. It's an NIV version of the Bible that they don't print anymore. The later versions of the NIV are different, and I don't like them as much. I don't think they're quite as accurate. But also the main reason is because in 1986 for Christmas, my grandparents and my aunt and uncle gave me this Bible. And so My grandparents were both in heaven less than 10 years after that. So it's completely irreplaceable. And most of it, honestly, is still in good shape. I've got notes in that Bible. I've got portions that I've highlighted, but it's just the binding. I didn't want to use it anymore because I was afraid it would completely fall apart and I just wouldn't even be able to use it. And so, yeah, the inscription from my grandfather in his handwriting is, again, it's God's word, and that's the most important thing. But this part makes it kind of a family heirloom, and I'm just really thankful. He wrote in it, and then I asked my uncle, because it was from my aunt and uncle too, would you write in it? And he's like, well, Grandpa didn't leave me any room. So Grandpa has big, Joe Brown had big fancy handwriting. I love it. And then Uncle Paul was like, well, I'll fit it in, which is great. Well, so a friend of mine, somehow it came up in conversation that they knew of a place that rebound Bibles. And I was very excited to check that out. It's a place called the Good Word Company. And long story short, I sent my Bible off to Corbin at the Good Word Company and had it rebound. And so this is how it looks now. I am really, really happy with it. And I'm going to actually be reading from it later in this episode. I can use it again without worrying that it's going to fall completely apart. Here's what the spine looks like. There's a mark of the binding company, the Good Word Company. Part of what they offer is you can add ribbons, and I added 3 different ribbons of different colors. Here's what the inside cover looks like, the end sheets. And here's a picture of, you can kind of see the new binding on the outside and that page where my grandfather and my uncle wrote. So that's all together now. And, when I showed you the old Bible, I didn't show you the cover because it's completely off. It was missing, but I had saved it. And this is what that looked like. And my grandparents had it customized for me, or personalized, with my name. And so I decided to have the Good Word Company do this same thing, but without the gold. For whatever reason, that's just what spoke to me this time. But I wanted to have my name on it because originally that's how it was given to me. So I could not be happier with the work that the Good Word Company did. And we're going to put a link in the description of this episode. If you have a Bible that you need to have rebound, you can reach out to them, and they've got a page that you kind of go through and fill out. It's really cool because you can personalize the leather. I mean, they have the brown that I chose. They also have a tan. They have a black. They even have blue leather, green leather. There's a lot of options. Where you personalize it, you can have a plain stamp like I did, or if you want to put gold or silver in it, you can do that. You can have a Holy Bible stamped on it. Like I said, you can have up to 3 ribbons. They have 7 different colors of ribbons to choose from. And so you can really customize it and just get what you want. Mm-hmm. Bibles are not cheap. A good Bible that has study notes in it is not cheap, but it probably would have been a little less expensive to just get a new Bible. Like I said, that version of the NIV is not available as a new printing right now. And the fact that it was a gift from family and there's an inscription in there is completely irreplaceable. So I paid a little over $100 to have that work done, and I thought it was well worth it.
Oh, yeah, to have that treasure back.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known about that before my NIV fell apart and I had to get some pages laminated.
I think yours is past being fixed at this point, unfortunately. But anyway, I'm really happy, and so I just wanted to put that out there. If anybody else has got something in a similar situation, you can reach out to the Good Word Company. I'm sure they can help you too.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, to recap last week, we were halfway through talking about some of the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled as Messiah.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, just to recap again, in the Bible, prophecy generally refers to a divinely inspired message, often with an emphasis on future events.
Right.
It's basically someone predicting the future. Mm-hmm. So in 1958, there was the book Science Speaks by Peter Stoner. I did find this online, did a little more searching. I think it was maybe around $40. We could maybe get a copy.
Oh, wow.
Might put that on the old birthday list.
There you go.
But this was in 1958. So you need to remember all the statistics and the math work that he was doing was based on when those prophecies were written until 1958. And he tried to be really conservative in those estimates.
Yeah.
But really what that means for us now in 2025 is that the odds have gotten even bigger. Like it's even more difficult that someone would fulfill all those prophecies. It's amazing.
Like 67 more years of people.
Yeah.
Have lived. So the odds are even worse that anyone would fulfill all these prophecies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So number one was the Old Testament prophecy that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. And that can be found in Micah 5:2.
Right. And this is our recap of what we did last week. We went back and made some graphics just to maybe make it a little easier. So you should be seeing those.
Yes.
This was fulfilled, and be careful how I don't want to say it weird. It was fulfilled by Jesus being born in Bethlehem, but we get that information from the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 4 through 6.
And that probability was 1 in 280,000.
Okay. Just that one by itself.
Mm-hmm. Number 2 from last week was from Malachi 3:1, and it said that the Messiah would have a forerunner, someone that would come before him.
And in Mark chapter 1, verses 2 through 8, we find out that Jesus had a forerunner, and his name was John the Baptist.
The probability for that happening is about 1 in 1,000.
Okay. Again, that feels low, but I'm not an expert in this field. So,
Number 3. This prophecy is from Zechariah 9:9, and is that the Messiah would enter Jerusalem riding on a donkey.
Mm-hmm. And in Matthew 21, 4 through 11, we learn that Jesus does enter Jerusalem, and he is riding on a donkey.
Right? And they set that probability at about 1 in 100.
Apparently, there were quite a few people riding into Jerusalem on a donkey.
Right. And then number 4 from last week. This is found in Psalm 41:9, and that it is that the Messiah would be betrayed by a friend.
Yeah. Sad.
Yes.
And don't know when you're watching this. We're recording this pretty close to Easter 2025, and we've been watching a lot of portrayals of Holy Week, including The Chosen and others, and just that betrayal by a friend is a pretty heavy thing.
Yeah.
But that did in fact happen with Jesus, and most people know that he was betrayed by Judas. You can look that up in Luke 22:21 and get that information for sure.
And then that probability was 1 in 1,000. All right, so we are at the new prophecies that we didn't talk about last week. We're going to pick up with number 5.
Yep.
And I thought for this week we'd go ahead and read the scriptures that correspond with these. So the first one is going to be, look at your Bible.
I have a really good Bible I can read it from, just so you know.
I love it. All right, I'm going to read the first one, the Old Testament prophecy. Get the old glasses on here.
Yep. Old people doing a podcast.
Old people glasses. Okay, Zechariah 11:12. This is that the Messiah would be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. And it says, I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver.
So it's recorded that actually did happen in Matthew 26:15, which says, and this is Judas Iscariot speak. I'll read 14 also. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and, verse 15, asked, what are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you? So they counted out for him 30 silver coins.
Okay. And that probability was 1 in 1,000.
Interesting, if you've been in the church for a while, if you are a Christian, if you've read the Bible, none of these are like, oh my gosh, it actually happened. Like, it happened.
Right.
If you're new to Christianity and you found this podcast, we're really glad that you're here. I don't mean to disrespect if anybody's finding this information surprising, but I think it's a good exercise to go through and look at the actual prophecies and the actual fulfillment, because it's for real. It's for real. And sometimes you get haters that are like, he wasn't the Messiah. That's naive. That's weird that you would think that. Hopefully by the time we get to the end of this episode, you're going to see the proof of Jesus being the Messiah is pretty strong.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Number 6.
Did you say 1 in 1,000 for that one?
I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
My
and
bad.
if not, it's on that really cool graphic.
I was too busy jumping in, so I don't know what you said.
All right. I'm going to read Zechariah 11:13 for the next one. And this is that those 30 pieces of silver would be cast down and used to buy a potter's field. It says in Zechariah 11:13, and the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they priced me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter.
So 30 pieces of silver were used to buy a potter's field, and we find that recorded in Matthew 27, verses 3 through 10, which says, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Really quickly, too, your prophecy was from the book of Zechariah.
Yes.
The prophet Zechariah. And here in Matthew, it says, then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. And it quotes, but what we have learned is that the prophets were bound together in the old, like at this time, the prophets would have been bound together. Jeremiah was the first prophet. And so they would have said anything that happens in that section of scripture, even though it was said by Zechariah. In fact, I can even read it. A Talmudic tradition states that the prophetic writings were placed in the canon in this order: Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, etc., and many Hebrew manuscripts follow this order. Thus, Matthew cited the passage as from the roll of the prophets in general and by the name of the first book, Jeremiah, even though it was a prophecy from Zechariah.
Okay, so he was basically saying it's from that section.
Yes.
The section of prophecy.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm here to contribute.
With your amazing refurbished Bible.
That's why I like it.
The probability of that happening was 1 in 100,000.
Yeah.
All right, number 7 has to do with Isaiah 53:7. It says, although innocent, the Messiah kept silent when on trial, which I'm thinking, I would have a very hard time doing that.
Yeah.
I would not want to sit there if I knew I was innocent, listening to people accuse me and to be silent. That would be very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. So Isaiah 53:7, he was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth.
So that was a prophecy. And then in Mark 14:60-61, this is what's recorded of what actually happened with Jesus. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like most people would speak up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's human nature.
Yeah.
That you have to try to defend yourself, especially if you feel wrongly accused. Jesus wasn't crucified because he was guilty of anything. He was crucified in order to pay the penalty for our sins.
Yeah.
And he was only qualified to pay the penalty for my sins because he didn't have to pay the penalty for his own sins because he never sinned.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So when he was being accused of all those things, he could have defended himself. He could have called down angels to rescue him, but he did not.
That probability is set at 1 in 1,000. All right.
Probably low.
Yeah. And number 8. This is found in Psalm 22, verse 16. And it says, this has to do with the fact that the Messiah would die by crucifixion.
Okay.
Which I believe at the time that this was written, crucifixion wasn't a thing yet. I don't think it had been invented yet. So, as a prophet, when you're writing the Lord's words, you have to write it whether it makes sense to you or not.
Yeah.
And so it says in Psalm 22, verse 16, "Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet." And so that's speaking about how he would die. And then what is the New Testament correlation?
Well, I just want to point out, prophesying something that hasn't been invented yet and that doesn't make sense. I mean, that's a for real prophecy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not disrespecting the other prophecies, but like when people don't even understand it and they're like, and then it comes true, you're like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's next level.
Yeah. I love it.
So John 19:17-18, John tells us, carrying his own cross, and of course this is, well, they do mention his name here, but this is the whole story about Jesus. We're jumping into the middle of it. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. Here they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. So very specifically talks about Jesus being crucified.
Mm-hmm. And that probability was set at 1 in 10,000.
Well, people were crucified at that time, but how many were crucified that were also prophesied to be the Messiah?
Right.
What other human was fulfilling prophecies of old, leaning toward that person being the Messiah? And, oh, by the way, they were put to death, which you could see maybe happening, but specifically through crucifixion. So
right, claiming to be the Messiah, and they were crucified.
1 in 10,000 is one of the longer odds in this whole thing, but I still feel like it's low.
Yeah. Well, before we get to slide number 9, I was just thinking that maybe you could explain a little bit of the math on this.
Yeah, so those were the 8 prophecies that we wanted to cover. Number 9, the slide 9 that she alluded to, is going to be kind of a visual of all of these probabilities together, which I think is really cool. So here's how Peter Stoner did it. We talked about the probability of number 1 by itself happening, the probability of number 2 by itself happening. So at some point you have to say, well, to be the Messiah, you would have to fulfill all the prophecies. And so what would be the odds of one person fulfilling all 8 prophecies? And then there's another part too that we'll get to in a minute. So multiplying all these probabilities together produces a number rounded off, which is 1 times 10 to the 28th power. That's ridiculously large. Then you want to divide that number by an estimate of the number of people who have lived since the times of the prophecies until the time that that book was written, which was 1958. Because some people were saying Jesus, I mean, the whole point of this is trying to prove that Jesus was and is the Messiah. And some people are saying he's not. So if he's not, well, who is it, or is that person here yet? And if that's what you're saying, then you would say, well, how many people, what are the odds? It has to include all the people from the time of the prophecy until current time, which the book that we're referencing was written in 1958. So he calculated that at 88 billion. And that produces a probability of all 8 prophecies being fulfilled accidentally in the life of one person. And you understand why that's important, because if you're saying Jesus wasn't the Messiah, but he somehow fulfilled all these prophecies without being the Messiah, then you're saying it happened by accident. And so the probability of all 8 prophecies being fulfilled by one person and them not being the Messiah is 1 in 10 to the 17th, or we'll show you the graphic of what that number looks like. That's 1 with 17 zeros behind it and commas in all the appropriate places. So if you aren't really into math or numbers, you at least know that's a really huge number. And 1 out of all of those, that's your probability. Those are terrible odds.
Yeah.
That's probably never happening. But it did, because Jesus did fulfill all 8 of those prophecies. But that just points to him being the Messiah, not to the fact that it could have maybe possibly happened by accident. The math, I mean, people say follow the science. Well, math is one of the sciences.
Yeah.
I mean, follow the math, baby. I don't think that happened by accident. And just because I love numbers, I'm just going to take a minute and let's just look. This won't take long.
Okay.
All right. So just to kind of go through this, if you're, haven't thought about it in a while, here's how numbers work. In the first place, we have ones, then we have tens, then we have hundreds, and then a number with a comma and 3 zeros, that's 1,000. If you have 6 zeros, that's 1,000,000. If you have 9 zeros, that's 1,000,000,000. If you have 12 zeros, that's 1,000,000,000,000. If you have 15 zeros, that's 1,000,000,000,000. And if you have 17 zeros, that's 100 quadrillion. And the reason you know that's a ridiculously huge number is that's more than the national debt. So, so that's a lot. If you think about it in dollars, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So that's the chance of someone fulfilling all 8 of these prophecies by accident.
And that's just 8.
And that's just 8. And that was the part that I was going to circle back to. Thank you. Because what we learned last episode is, depending on who you talk to and which things they count, at a minimum, Jesus fulfilled 300 prophecies.
Yeah. Yeah.
At a minimum. And maybe as many as 500 or more. So that 1 in 100 quadrillion, not even close. It's actually, for him to fulfill all 300 prophecies, like, I don't know if you could fit it on a slide. We didn't have that number.
Yeah.
And since 1958 to now, a whole lot more people have lived. But Jesus really did fulfill all those prophecies. So that's what I mentioned earlier. When we get to the end of this, I think you're going to have a hard time saying he wasn't the Messiah, because who else did it? No one. Who else fulfilled all those prophecies? The prophecies written by the prophets of God about a Messiah for God's chosen people from the creator of the universe, and Jesus fulfilled them. He is the Messiah.
Well, there's another part of the book, and I wasn't from the research that I did. I love that this was like a way to visualize it. So it said, if you want to try to visualize 1 in 100 quadrillion.
Yep.
First of all, if you want to say like 1 in 10, you take 10, let's say 10 tickets, you throw them in a bowl or a hat, you blindfold somebody, and then say, okay, just pull out one ticket that I've marked, just one of them.
Yeah.
The chances that they will, blindfolded, put their hand in and pull out the ticket that has the mark on it is 1 in 10.
Yep.
Because there's 10 in there and they're pulling out 1.
Right.
So if you want to picture 1 in 100 quadrillion, it says, suppose that you take that many silver dollars and you have just one that you mark. You put a mark on it.
Okay.
So you take all of those silver dollars, 100 quadrillion silver dollars, and you lay them on the face of Texas.
Yeah.
They will be 2 feet deep.
And Texas is pretty big, by the way.
Texas claims to be very large.
Texas is massive.
It's very massive.
I like that we're using silver dollars, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you take those silver dollars, cover Texas 2 feet deep,
Okay.
and only one of those silver dollars has a mark on it.
Yeah.
Now you blindfold someone and tell them you can travel as far as you want, but you have to pick one silver dollar.
Can we stir them up first?
You can stir them up. You can stir them up. But
Not that it would matter.
What is the chance of that person blindfolded, traveling the state of Texas 2 feet deep in silver dollars, and they just happen
Yeah.
to pick that perfect one with the mark on it?
No.
It's not happening.
No.
That is the chance of someone fulfilling just those 8 prophecies perfectly. It's impossible unless you're actually the Messiah.
Can you imagine how difficult it would be to travel on top of a 2 foot thick collection of silver dollars? You're not getting any traction.
Yeah. No. No. It just blows your mind
Yeah,
at how incredible that would be.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we started a few episodes back talking about why we believe that the Bible is true, and this is part of that. We could probably do 100 more episodes about reasons why we believe the Bible is true. We'd have to do some serious study, but we could do more for sure. And if you're interested in this topic, we are going to put a link in the description to another article or another website, 351 Old Testament prophecies fulfilled in Jesus Christ, which is pretty interesting. And it has the prophecies and where the fulfillment is recorded, and you could study that. So as far as what we're going to do next, we'll see. We probably shouldn't prophesy that because we agreed that neither one of us is truly a prophet.
We have an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed, and it wasn't like this when I was a kid, but it seems like in society today, there are certain people anyway who tend to see everyone or everything, every group or every idea as 100% good or 100% bad. And I'm not sure that's healthy, fair, or realistic, but it's out there. And I think maybe we're going to talk about something about that next week. But we're looking forward to it. We're having a great time. We hope that you're enjoying hanging out with us. And if you've questioned whether Jesus really is the Messiah, he fulfilled over 300 prophecies. And the mathematical chances of anyone doing that who's not truly the Messiah, I mean, it's not happening. Follow the science.
And what a beautiful, beautiful example of God's love.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? I am going to just knock this out of the park for you. You don't have any reason to doubt me. And it's so kind of him to do that.
Well, yeah. And there are people who have been very intelligent and scholarly, but have thought, surely Jesus is not the Messiah. And pretty much when anyone sets out to disprove that and sets out on an honest quest to look for the truth and really digs in and studies the actual documents and prophecies and the information that's available, they come away saying, oh, snap, Jesus is the Messiah. So that's definitely where we landed. We hope that's where you have landed or will land. And we know your time is valuable. We really appreciate you, very much appreciate you. I just put those two together as one word. Spending your time with us, and we hope to see you next time.
Absolutely.
All right. We're David and Hillary. Thanks for joining us.
See ya.